I was standing in the shadows of the upstairs landing, my arms aching from the weight of the perfectly wrapped presents. Down below, a sliver of warm, golden light bled from the dining room, where the door had been left slightly ajar. I'd arrived early, hoping for a quiet moment before the chaos of the party, but they were already there, and I heard it all. "All right, let's run it from the top one more time." My mother's voice, crisp and theatrical, floated up the stairs. "Chloe, you enter holding the dirty rag. Do I really have to touch it?" My sister whined, followed by a giggle. "I want the engine grease to look authentic. It's the ideal accessory for our dear Alex." A knot of ice formed in my stomach. They were practicing a bit, a performance. And I was the joke. "Then I'll present the mock inheritance," my father boomed, his voice thick with amusement. "To Alexandra, we bequeath this rusty wrench and a mountain of student debt." The wave of laughter that followed was a physical blow. This wasn't just casual teasing. They were staging my public humiliation for their Christmas party. I glanced down at the gifts I was holding. I'd spent weeks and more money than I should have, picking out each one. I just wanted to feel like I belonged. But standing there in the cold darkness of the hallway, a profound and simple truth finally settled in my bones. I wasn't part of the family. I was the court jester. I didn't storm down the stairs. I didn't shout. I just turned, silent and weightless, and walked out into the biting December air. By the time they noticed I was gone, my real Christmas gift would be on its way, and I promised myself they wouldn't be laughing then. Before we get into the rest of the story, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know. The Pierce Estate in Westport, Connecticut wasn't a home. It was a carefully curated magazine spread. It stood at the end of a winding, manicured driveway, surrounded by lawns that looked like they were cut with scissors and hedges trimmed with a protractor. The towering white columns of the porch gleamed, untouched by weather or time. It was the postcard image of a happy, successful family. But we weren't happy. We were just arranged to look that way. The inside was even more sterile. The floors were dark, polished mahogany that echoed every footstep. The walls were a gallery white, adorned with abstract art that was chosen for its color palette, not its meaning. Glass tables reflected the cold, recessed lighting. Silk orchids stood in tall vases, their perfect blooms a testament to my mother, Eleanor's, disdain for anything that could wilt or die. She preferred eternal, unblemished perfection. I remember the feeling of walking through that front door for weekend visits. The air always carried the same sharp scent of lemon polish and a faint, cloying whiff of expensive fig candles. It was the smell of being judged. Every object in that house had its designated spot. The TV remotes were arranged by size on a silver tray. The beige cashmere throws on the cream-colored sofas were artfully draped. The gallery wall in the main hall was a shrine to my family's achievements. Dad's Wharton MBA, Mom's articles in architectural digests, my brother Nathan's acceptance to Yale Law, my sister Chloe's national equestrian trophies. There was no empty frame on that wall for me. I was the scuff mark on their perfect floor. I was the crack in their porcelain facade. I just didn't belong. I was too much, even in my silence. My hands were calloused. My passions were grimy. While Chloe was mastering the art of the perfect selfie angle and Nathan was learning about leveraged buyouts, I was in the back of the garage, rebuilding a vintage Triumph motorcycle engine. The garage was my sanctuary. It was the one place in the house where a little bit of dirt was tolerated. But it wasn't my space. "Alexandra, get that pile of scrap metal off the floor," Dad would command without even looking up from his phone. "I need to get the Porsche in." He never asked what I was building. He never wondered why there was a streak of oil across my forehead. He just saw an inconvenience. Our difference was a visual clash. My family was glossy. Dad, Richard, was tall and silver-haired, perpetually clad in a tailored suit or a crisp golf polo. Mom was slender and elegant, all sharp angles and designer neutrals. Chloe was a younger, more ruthless copy of her. Nathan was handsome in that forgettable, private equity kind of way. Then there was me. I had dark, unruly hair that resisted all attempts to be tamed, and I lived in worn-in jeans and flannel shirts because they could withstand a bit of grease. My knuckles bore the faint, silvery scars of slipped wrenches. For years, I tried. I really did. I wore the suffocating dresses Mom bought me. I sat through the endless country club dinners, smiling until my face ached. But it was like wearing a costume that was 3 sizes too small, slowly choking the life out of me. The real breaking point came when I was 18, at one of our ritualistic Tuesday night dinners. Dinner at the Pierce estate was always a performance. We sat at a long, imposing mahogany table, using sterling silver cutlery that felt ridiculously heavy in my hands. The only sounds were the soft clinking of forks on china and the low murmur of approved conversation topics. "Nathan, how are the internship interviews going?" Dad would ask. "Good, sir. I have a final round with Goldman on Friday," Nathan would reply, his tie perfectly knotted. "Excellent. That's the Pierce standard," Dad would say, beaming. He'd then turn his attention to my sister. "Chloe, darling, how was the photo shoot?" "It was amazing," Chloe would chirp, flipping her perfect blonde hair. "The brand wants to sign me for their whole summer campaign. Obviously." "That's my star," Mom would say, clapping her hands together softly, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Then, the inevitable silence. They all focused on their meticulously plated food. No one looked at me. I was at the far end of the table, an afterthought. I kept my hands in my lap to hide a fresh gash on my knuckle. "I declared my major today," I said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud in the oppressive quiet. Dad paused mid-chew. He peered at me over the top of his reading glasses. "Oh? Did you finally settle on art history? Or perhaps communications?" "No," I said, taking a steadying breath. "Automotive design and engineering." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. It felt like all the oxygen had been vacuumed out of the room. And then my father slammed his crystal water glass down on the table. It didn't just land, it hit with a sharp crack, a spiderweb of fractures instantly appearing in the glass. The sound was like a gunshot in that pristine room. "Excuse me?" Dad said, his voice dangerously low. "Automotive design," I repeated, my own voice wavering slightly. "I want to design high-performance engines. I want to build things." Mom placed her fork down with surgical precision. She looked at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror, as if I'd just announced I was joining the circus. "Alexandra, darling, that's a trade. That's for men in dirty overalls. It's engineering, Mom. It's physics and calculus," I argued. "It is manual labor," Dad snarled, his face flushing a deep, angry red. "I did not pay for a decade of private school so my daughter could end up as a glorified grease monkey. What will people say? The Pierces are bankers, lawyers, artists. We are not mechanics." "It's what I'm good at," I whispered, the fight draining out of me. "It is a waste," Dad declared. He picked up his linen napkin and dabbed his lips, as if my words had left a foul taste in his mouth. "You will change your major to business." "No," I said. It was the first time I had ever truly defied him. He stared at me, his eyes cold and hard as steel. "Then don't expect me to applaud your descent into mediocrity." He stood, scraping his chair back, and left the room. Mom scurried after him, throwing me a look of profound disappointment. Chloe snickered into her hand. Nathan just stared at his plate, embarrassed for me. I was left alone at the long, polished table. The cracked glass sat there, a testament to my transgression. That sharp, splintering sound stayed with me. It was the sound of a door slamming shut in my face. It was the sound of my father deciding I was no longer an asset on his personal balance sheet. That night, The grand house felt more like a mausoleum than ever. I went up to my bedroom, a pale lavender prison of a room I'd always hated. And in my mind, I started packing a bag. I didn't leave for good that night, but in my heart, I was already gone. I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and liberating, that I would never be the daughter they wanted. I was just a ghost haunting their perfect house. After that dinner, I became functionally invisible. It wasn't a sudden banishment, but a slow, quiet phasing out, like a photograph left in the sun. I stuck with my major. I worked 2 jobs to cover the costs of books and lab fees that Dad refused to fund. He still paid my tuition, but he made sure I felt the weight of it. Every semester's check was accompanied by a lecture about my expensive hobby and the money I was squandering. At family functions, he stopped introducing me to his colleagues. He'd introduce Nathan as the future of finance and Chloe as our rising star. When he got to me, he'd just sigh and say, "And this is my other daughter, Alex." He called my passion my blue-collar phase. Alex is going through a bit of a blue-collar phase, he'd tell his friends on the golf course, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Thinks getting her hands dirty builds character. She'll come running back to civilization when she realizes a paycheck is more important than a socket wrench. They would all share a hearty laugh, the kind of deep, rich sound that made me feel like I was shrinking. Mom's approach was different. She wasn't overtly angry, she was mortified. "It's just a phase," she'd tell her friends at the gallery openings. "She's exploring a very industrial aesthetic." Her main strategy was to try and reprogram me. She'd book me for manicures that I would cancel. She'd send me job listings for marketing positions at fashion houses. She never missed an opportunity to critique my appearance. "Alex, you smell like a garage," she'd say, wrinkling her nose as I walked in. "Can't you just wear a nice cashmere sweater? For me? Please?" "This is me, Mom," I'd reply, tired of the same argument. "No, this is you performing rebellion to hurt us," she'd snap back. That was her narrative, and she clung to it. In her mind, I had chosen this life specifically to embarrass her. She couldn't comprehend that I found beauty in the clean, undeniable logic of an engine. An engine doesn't have a hidden agenda. If a part is broken, it's broken. It doesn't pretend to be fine while quietly resenting you. It just waits for you to fix it. My siblings, though, were the worst. Nathan, the golden boy, saw me as a charity case. Alex just switched to business, he told me one afternoon, watching me from a safe distance as I changed the starter on my old Ford F-150. "You're making life so much harder than it needs to be. Dad will never respect this." "I don't need his respect," I said from underneath the truck. "Everyone wants their father's respect," he said, shaking his head with a sigh. "You're just being stubborn. It's embarrassing for him." "I'm embarrassing him? By having a skill?" I asked, wiping sweat from my brow with the back of a greasy hand. "By looking like that," Nathan said, gesturing at my oil-stained coveralls. "You look poor, Alex, and we are not poor." Chloe, on the other hand, was pure malice. As a burgeoning social media influencer, she found that I made for excellent cringe content. One weekend, I was home, grabbing a quick bite in the kitchen after a long shift at the custom shop I was working at. I'd showered, but the faint, metallic scent of motor oil clung to my hair, and a stubborn smudge of grease was on my jawline. Chloe waltzed in, her phone already recording. "Hey, besties," she chirped to her audience. "I'm back home at my parents' gorgeous house." She did a slow pan of the immaculate kitchen before landing the camera on me. "And look what the cat dragged in," she said with a laugh. "This is my sister, Alex. Say hi to the fans, Alex." I turned away. "Chloe, stop it." She zoomed in on my face. "You, Alex, you still have grime on you. You literally smell like a gas station." She wrinkled her nose dramatically for the camera. "Guys, can you believe my sister fixes cars for a living? Like, with her hands? I'm so scared she's gonna get grease on Mom's marble countertops." I pushed past her and her phone. "Leave me alone." "So moody," she narrated to her followers. I guess that's what manual labor does to you. Zero good vibes. She posted the video. It got tens of thousands of views. The comments were a fresh new hell. Is she the adopted one? LOL, the black sheep. My family has one of those too. Chloe read them aloud at dinner, howling with laughter. Mom and Dad just chuckled. Well, dear, if you don't want people to say you look dirty, perhaps you should wash more thoroughly, Mom commented, taking a delicate sip of her Chardonnay. I learned my lesson. My feelings were irrelevant. My dignity was a prop for their family portrait. I was the before picture that made their after look so much more impressive. I stopped talking about my work. I stopped trying to share my successes. I learned to move through their house like a whisper, making myself as small and quiet as possible. If they didn't see me, they couldn't hurt me. I was a ghost in my own family album. I still showed up for holidays out of a deeply ingrained sense of obligation. Bringing gifts they'd politely set aside and listening to them boast while I counted the seconds until I could escape. But a small, foolish part of me still held out hope. Hope that one day Dad would look at a design I'd created and say, "I'm proud of you." Hope that Mom would say, "You work so hard." Hope that they would finally see me, not just the grease stains. That hope was a dangerous, toxic thing. It kept me coming back for more. And it was that hope that led me straight to their house on Christmas Eve, walking blindly into the trap they'd so carefully laid. It was Christmas Eve. The air had that sharp, biting quality of a New England winter, the kind that seeps into your bones. I was driving my truck, an old but reliable Ford F-150 with a few honorable scars on its bumper. It was the only thing I owned that felt entirely mine, solid, powerful, and unapologetically real, unlike the world I was driving toward. I'd spent the last week lying to myself. I told myself this year would be different. I was 25 now, an adult with my own business. Their words couldn't touch me anymore. If I just brought the right gifts, wore the right smile, maybe they would finally see me. It was a stupid lie, but it was the kind of lie you tell yourself when you're starving for a family. You drink the poison and pretend it's water. I had gone to 3 different high-end shops. For Dad, a first edition copy of a book on financial history he'd once mentioned, costing me nearly $500. For Mom, a custom blended perfume from a niche New York perfumer. For Nathan, a curated subscription box of rare single-origin coffees. For Chloe, a gift certificate to a ludicrously expensive spa. I wrapped them all in heavy cream-colored paper with silver ribbons. I wanted it all to be flawless. I pulled into their long, winding driveway at precisely 6:30 p.m. The party didn't officially start until 8, but I was early. I wanted to help, to be useful, to have that quiet moment of connection before the performance began. The house was ablaze with light, a candle in every window, thousands of tiny white lights wrapped around the ancient oak tree in the front yard. It was a perfect illusion of warmth and happiness. I parked my truck down the street, a subconscious habit to avoid dripping a single drop of oil on their pristine cobblestone driveway. I gathered the pile of presents in my arms. They felt heavy and clumsy. The frozen grass crunched under my boots as I walked to the front door. I didn't ring the bell. I still had a key. I was, in theory, family. I let myself in quietly. The house was warm and smelled of cinnamon, roasting duck, and my mother's signature perfume. Soft classical music drifted from invisible speakers. I slipped off my boots at the door and walked in my socks across the gleaming mahogany floor, heading for the dining room to place the gifts under their enormous, professionally decorated tree. The double doors were almost closed, but not quite. A crack remained, a sliver of light and sound leaking into the dim hallway. "Okay, people, listen up," my father's voice boomed, filled with a jovial energy he never used with me. "We need to nail the timing. Nathan, you wheel the cart in after my toast." "Got it," Nathan said. Should I look sad for her or just disgusted? Disgusted, Mom's voice cut in sharp and clear, as if you've just found a cockroach in the kitchen. I froze mid-step, the presence digging into my forearms. I should walk away. I knew I should, but my feet were rooted to the floor. So I stand up, Chloe said, and I say, "Oh, look, it seems Alex brought her work tools with her." "Yes," Mom confirmed, and then you present her with the dirty jumpsuit. Make sure you hold it far away from yourself. We don't want you to get stained. My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it shattered. And then, Dad continued, his voice choked with laughter, I read from the will. To my daughter, Alexandra, who values grit over grace, I bequeath the one thing she truly understands, a lifetime supply of engine degreaser and my outstanding balance at the town dump. The room exploded. It wasn't just a laugh, it was a deep, cathartic roar. My mother was cackling, my brother was howling, my sister was shrieking with glee. "This is going to be the best part of the night," Chloe managed to say. "I'm definitely going to get this on my live stream, the Grease Monkey's inheritance. My followers are going to die. It's a valuable lesson," Dad said, his laughter subsiding into amused chuckles. "She needs a mirror held up to her. Shame can be a powerful motivator. Maybe after this, she'll finally quit that ridiculous hobby and get a real job. We're doing it out of love," Mom added piously. "Tough love." I stood in the hallway, the silver ribbon from Dad's gift cutting into my skin. They had props. They had a script. I wasn't a guest at their party. I was the floor show, the freak they were about to parade in front of all their wealthy friends and Chloe's online audience. And they had the audacity to call it love. Something inside me finally broke. It wasn't a loud, violent snap, but a quiet, final severance. It was the sound of a heavy anchor finally hitting the seabed after a long, long fall. All those years of trying, of hoping, of swallowing insults and pretending they didn't sting, it all just dissolved. I looked down at the expensive, meaningless gifts in my arms. I didn't feel rage, which surprised me. I expected to want to kick down that door and scream until my throat was raw, but it wasn't anger I felt. It was completion. The feeling you get when you close the last page of a bad book. You just put it down. You don't think about it again. I turned around. I walked deliberately back to the front door. I wasn't sneaking anymore. I didn't care if they heard my footsteps. I opened the door, and the frigid air slapped my face, a welcome shock. There was an ornate, perfectly painted white bench on the porch. I set the stack of presents down on it. I left no note. I didn't even take my house key. I stepped out into the dark. I walked to my truck, got in, and turned the ignition. The engine roared to life. A deep, guttural sound my father despised. To me, in that moment, it sounded like a declaration of independence. I put the truck in drive and pulled away from the curb. I didn't look back at the house full of warm lights and cold people. I left them to their rehearsal. They were waiting for their victim to walk through the door. But she was already gone. I drove for what felt like an hour with no destination in mind. I just had to put miles between me and that house. I needed to scrub the scent of their lives out of my lungs. My phone started buzzing in the cup holder, a text from Mom. "Where are you?" "Party starts in an hour. Don't be late. And for heaven's sake, wear the dress I sent you." I didn't reply. I just tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. I eventually pulled off I-95 into the parking lot of a 24-hour convenience store. It was a gritty, forgotten place with flickering fluorescent lights and a persistent smell of stale coffee and gasoline. It was ugly. It was real. It was perfect. I parked the truck and killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was deafening. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, and just breathed. I had to think. I could never go back there. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. But the guilt, that old familiar poison, was already seeping in. Maybe you misheard. Maybe it was just a bad joke. My phone buzzed again. This time I picked it up. It was my best friend and, as of 2 years ago, my business manager, Maya. I answered, my voice barely a whisper. Hey. Hey you, she said, her voice warm. You sound weird. You okay? Aren't you supposed to be at the annual Pierce Family Gala of Pretension? I left, I said flatly. Already? Maya sounded surprised. Did they start in on you early this year? They wrote a skit, Maya. They had props. They were going to bequeath me engine degreaser in front of everyone. What? Maya's voice went cold. Alex, you can't be serious. I heard them practicing. Dad was going to read from a fake will. That is twisted, Maya hissed. That is a level of cruel I didn't even think they were capable of. I'm done, Maya. For real this time. I'm so done. Good, she said, her tone firm. You should have been done 5 years ago. Where are you? A gas station off the highway. Okay, just breathe. What do you need from me? I don't know, I said, my voice cracking. I just feel so small. They make me feel like I have nothing, like I'm worthless. You have plenty, Maya said gently. You have a business that's killing it. You have a hell of a lot more in savings than they think you do. You have me. I know, I sighed. But to them, I'm just the failure who rents a small workshop in Bridgeport. Alex, Maya said slowly, and her tone shifted. Stop. What? You don't just rent a workshop. We've been aggressively investing your profits for 3 years. You know this. You told me to handle the portfolio. Yeah, I know. I just signed the papers you tell me to sign, I admitted, rubbing my tired eyes. I handle the engines. You handle the numbers. Why? I need you to open your laptop, Maya said. Right now. Maya, I'm in my truck at a mobile station. Open. The laptop. Hotspot your phone and do it. There was an urgency in her voice I'd never heard before, a strange mix of excitement and dark satisfaction. I grumbled but reached into the back seat for my bag. I balanced the laptop on my center console and connected to my phone. Okay, I said, logging in. I'm in. Go to the investment folder. AM Properties, LLC. I clicked through the files. I was a mechanic. I understood torque and compression ratios, not corporate structures. I'd let Maya run with my money because my custom engine and restoration business was quietly making a lot more money than anyone knew, and I wanted to keep it that way. I lived simply and reinvested almost everything. Okay, I see it, I said. AM Properties. Open the current assets spreadsheet, Maya instructed. I double-clicked. A list of addresses appeared. My eyes scanned down the list, and then they stopped. Address 142, Post Road East, Westport, Connecticut. Building type prime commercial retail. Tenant E, Pierce Gallery / Pierce Financial Consulting. I stared at the screen. The blinking cursor on the spreadsheet seemed to be mocking me. Maya, I whispered, is this the building? Maya said, her voice calm and steady. Your parents' gallery and office. The whole damn block. You own it. I own it. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. We closed on it 6 months ago, she said. It was part of that commercial foreclosure portfolio I told you about. You signed the final papers in August. I didn't read the addresses, I confessed. I just looked at the projected ROI. Well, now click on the Accounts Receivable tab, Maya said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. I clicked. There it was, in stark black and white, highlighted in red. Tenant Pierce Gallery / Financial. Status past due. Days past due 97. They haven't paid their rent in over 3 months, Maya explained. The previous owner was a mess, which is why we got the property for a steal. He never enforced anything. But we, my friend, are not a mess. I stared at the numbers. My father, who lectured me about financial responsibility. My mother, who sneered at my dirty job. They were broke, or at least broke enough to be 3 months behind on the rent for their precious, image-defining businesses. They don't know it's me? I asked. Nope. The ownership change was filed under the LLC. They've just been getting automated delinquency notices from a third-party management company. They have no idea AM Properties stands for Alexandra and Maya. I leaned back in the driver's seat. The old leather creaked. A new feeling washed over me, displacing the hurt and humiliation. It wasn't anger. It was cold, clear, and powerful. It was the feeling of a perfectly torqued bolt clicking into place. It was the feeling of leverage. I looked around the grimy gas station lot. The light above still flickered, but I no longer felt small. I wasn't the poor relation begging for scraps of affection. I wasn't the family failure. I was their landlord, and rent was past due. "Maya," I said, my voice completely steady now. "Yeah, boss," she replied. "Tell me my options." "Well," Maya said, and the glee in her voice was unmistakable. "They are well past their 90-day cure period, so their lease is technically void. You can start eviction proceedings. You can demand immediate payment of the full balance. Or you could send them a notice of default along with a notice of ownership, letting them know exactly who they've been stiffing for the last 3 months. I looked at the laptop screen, at the glowing red text. Past due. They wanted a Christmas surprise. They wanted to read from a fake will. They wanted a show. Draft it, I said. Draft what exactly? All of it, I said. The notice of default, the demand for immediate payment, the notice of lease termination, and the notice of ownership transfer. "And the signature on the letter?" Maya asked. I looked at my own hands on the steering wheel. There was a faint dark line of grease under my thumbnail that never quite washed out. A mark of my work. A mark of the blue-collar phase my father so despised. "Sign it with my full name," I said. "Alexandra Pierce." "On it," Maya said. "I'll have the PDF ready for you to review in 5 minutes." I hung up the phone and sat in the quiet cab of my truck, the heater humming softly. I wasn't going to their party. I wasn't going to scream or cry. I was going to send an email. It was just business. And for the first time in my life, I understood why my father loved it so much. I didn't storm or weep. For years, my emotions had been a turbulent sea of hurt, anger, and a desperate need for approval. But sitting there in my truck, under the buzzing fluorescent lights, the storm had passed. The water was glass. The files from Maya appeared in my inbox. There were 3 PDFs. The first was a formal notice of default, stating in cold legal terms that Pierce Gallery and Pierce Financial Consulting were 97 days delinquent on their lease payments to the tune of $55,000. The second was a notice of lease termination, effective in 30 days. The third was a proof of ownership transfer, showing that the commercial property at 142 Post Road East was now fully owned by AM Properties, LLC. And right there, at the bottom, under Managing Member, was my name, Alexandra Pierce. "Looks perfect," I told Maya over the phone, my voice so calm it was almost frightening. "I'm dispatching the courier," she said. "He's not cheap, but he works on Christmas Eve. He'll be at the country club in 20 minutes. That's where the charity gala is, right?" "Yes," I said. "Mom is co-chairing. They always do a big presentation before the dinner." "He's on his way," Maya said. Then she paused. "Alex, you know this is a point of no return, right? You can't go back to being the quiet black sheep daughter after this." I glanced at my reflection in the truck's dark window. I saw my messy ponytail, my plain flannel shirt, and the face of a woman who was done being the punchline. "I don't want to go back," I said. "Good," Maya replied. "Hit send on the email. The courier is for the dramatic flair." I held my finger over the send button on my phone. I thought about the rehearsal, about the oily jumpsuit, about my father's booming laugh. I thought about the crack of that water glass. They wanted a performance. They wanted a grand reveal. "Merry Christmas," I whispered to the empty truck. I pressed send. It wasn't revenge. Revenge is a hot, messy, emotional outburst. This was cold, clean, and logical. This was accounting. They had spent my entire life treating me like a liability. They were about to learn I was their single greatest asset, and the assets are always in control. I closed my laptop and started the engine. I didn't drive back towards Westport. I didn't drive towards my small apartment. I pulled out of the gas station and got back on the highway heading north. I was going to Vermont. I had a small cabin rented for a week, a trip I usually canceled at the last minute to make my obligatory, soul-crushing appearance at the family Christmas. Not this year. The lights of the Gold Coast faded in my rearview mirror. The guilt I had expected to feel never came. I thought I'd feel terrible for ruining their night, but I realized I wasn't ruining anything. I was just delivering the truth. If the truth ruined their party, that was a problem with their party, not with the truth. The ballroom at the Greenwich Country Club was opulent. I wasn't there, but I could picture it perfectly. I'd been dragged to that same event every year of my life. Gold and crimson decorations, massive floral arrangements, round tables draped in white linen. My mother, Eleanor Pierce, would be at the center of it all, radiating smug satisfaction in a designer gown. This was her stage. My father would be beside her, glad-handing, projecting an aura of wealth and success he apparently no longer possessed. Nathan would be networking. Chloe would be taking selfies for her followers. It was 6:47 p.m. I was somewhere in Massachusetts by then, listening to old rock music on the radio. Back in Connecticut, a man in a discreet courier uniform entered the ballroom. He was not a guest. He carried a single, rigid, legal envelope. He walked with purpose through the glittering crowd, his eyes fixed on my mother, who was currently directing the placement of a large ice sculpture. She saw him approaching and offered a tight, practiced smile, likely assuming it was a delivery of flowers from an admirer. She adored public gestures of admiration. "Mrs. Eleanor Pierce?" the courier asked, his voice professional and loud enough to cut through the din. "Yes, that's me." She beamed, extending a hand as if expecting him to kiss it. "Delivery for you," the man said, holding out a digital tablet. "Sign here, please." She scrawled her name with a dramatic flourish. "Thank you. Is this from the senator's office?" she asked, a little too loudly. "No information on the sender, ma'am," the courier said. He handed her the envelope and was gone as quickly as he'd appeared. The little bubble of people around my mother was watching, intrigued. "Well, open it, Eleanor," one of her friends urged. "Let's see what it is." Mom laughed. "Oh, it's probably just another thank you for my committee work." She slid her manicured nail under the flap and pulled out the contents. She expected thick, embossed cardstock. Instead, her fingers touched a sheaf of standard, cheap copy paper, stapled together in the corner. It looked vulgar and out of place against her silk dress. Her smile faltered. She squinted at the first page. Notice of default. The words made no sense to her. She froze. My father, sensing a change in the atmosphere, stepped to her side. "Eleanor? What is it?" He gently took the papers from her hand. He was a finance man. He knew what legal notices looked like. He put on his reading glasses. His face went white. It was instantaneous. All the blood seemed to drain from it. "Richard?" Mom whispered. "What does that say?" Dad didn't answer. He was flipping through the pages, his eyes scanning frantically. He saw the past due amount. He saw the termination clause. It's a mistake," he stammered, mostly to himself. "It must be." By now, Nathan and Chloe had drifted over, drawn by the palpable tension. The conversations around them had died down. Everyone was watching the perfect Pierce family, waiting for the next scene in the drama. "What is it, Dad?" Nathan asked. He reached for the last page of the packet, the ownership notice. His eyes scanned it. Then he read the name aloud, not because he meant to, but out of sheer, uncomprehending shock. Managing member. Alexandra Pierce. His voice cracked on my name. "Alex?" Chloe laughed, a nervous, tinny sound. "What are you talking about?" "Alex works on cars. She owns the building," Nathan said, looking up at our father, his eyes wide with confusion. "Dad, it says right here she owns the Post Road property, and we're 3 months behind on rent." The silence in that grand ballroom was absolute. The very people who had listened to my mother's pitying stories about her wayward daughter were now witness to the truth. The daughter they all thought was a failure was their landlord, and the family who defined themselves by their success was, in fact, broke. My mother snatched the papers back, her eyes zeroing in on my signature. It was the same messy scrawl from the permission slips she'd signed in elementary school, the same signature on the birthday cards she probably never kept. "She can't," Mom whispered, her voice trembling. "She doesn't have any money. She's just a mechanic." "She's the owner," Dad said, his voice hollow. He looked 20 years older. All the arrogance had been stripped away, leaving behind a frail, terrified man. "She bought the debt. She owns us." The skit they had so carefully rehearsed was dead. The props were useless. The big joke was on them. The audience was real. The stage was set, but the play had been completely rewritten. Mom looked around the room at the faces of her friends and saw not admiration, but pity. She saw the delicious gossip already forming on their lips. She looked toward the ballroom doors as if expecting me to walk in at any moment and shout, "Just kidding." But I wasn't there. I was hundreds of miles away, driving deeper into the quiet, dark night. For the first time in her meticulously controlled life, Eleanor Pierce was completely off script.